Hey, Sex Ed with DB listeners, DB here, and I need your help to make this podcast exactly what you want. We've put together a quick listener survey to find out what matters most to you, so we can cover the topics that you care about, find sponsors that match your interests, and create a podcast experience that's perfect for you. Plus, as a thank you, you could win a $100 gift card from Lion's Den. Your email is optional, so you can stay anonymous if you'd like. Just hit the link in the show notes and help us make Sex Ed with DB the best it can be for you.
It's like the old, like all of our grandparents being like, yep, he kept calling. You know, he called me about 600 times on the phone. Eventually I said, nope, I'm not interested. And then eventually I still said, no, I'm not interested. And then eventually he got me. It's like, well, that's bad that happened. And I'm so sorry.
Hey everybody, welcome to Rom-Com Bomb, a Sex Ed with DB podcast miniseries exploring popular rom-coms from the 90s and early aughts that gave us toxic messages about love and sex. Welcome back, Sex Ed with DB listeners, to another episode of Rom-Com Bomb. This week, we are joined by my great pal, Melissa Strype. She is hello there. She is a sex educator, musician, director, writer, comedian, actress, drummer, and one of the funniest people that I've ever met. Welcome, Melissa. Hello.
B, thank you for having me online.
Oh my goodness. Online, offline. I'll have you whatever which way. Love talking with you.
I appreciate that.
You know that deep in your heart and soul.
I do. And
it's kind of funny. I feel like our friendship really, since the past couple of years, has quite evolved. I feel like we were fast friends from the get, and then somehow it just kind of keeps getting better as the years progress.
Agree.
Yeah.
Agree. Thank you.
Hard yes. Yes.
Hard
thank you
yes.
very much. Folks, last week's teaser was this, an epic rom-com loved by all. Set in a high school in Seattle, the film follows the story of a rebellious and fiercely independent teenager and her relationship with the charming and witty bad boy of the school. As the movie unfolds, we witness the hilarious and heartwarming journey of the lead's younger sister, who can't date until she does. And of course, the film we're talking about today, can I get a drum roll from our drummer? Oh, that's good stuff. We're talking about 10 things I hate about you today. 10 things I hate about you. And she has her sticks, people. Okay, pay attention. This is, let me tell you, Melissa, this is one of my favorite rom-coms of all time.
Yeah,
I have to share that. Do you agree?
I agree. And I always loved it. But when I rewatched it for this, I was like, oh, I say almost every line of this every single day. I did
constantly. Yeah. There's just really amazing lines. I feel like this movie came out in 99. At the time, I was indeed 7 years old. So I don't know if I saw it when I was 7, but I definitely know it was on TV. It was on ABC Family. You know, I'm getting ahead of myself here. This next segment is called As a Kid. We're gonna talk about when we first saw it. How did it shape our ideas of high school romance? Were we crushing on Heath Ledger? Were we crushing on Kat? The answer for me, spoiler alert, both. Absolutely. Exactly. Like the dance scene of her kind of being sexy on the table. Like that's something that is burned into my memory forever.
Of course.
Tell me about your relationship to this amazing film.
I remember I was also in elementary school, and I remember it being like a little advanced to see. I don't remember exactly when I saw it, but I saw it pretty early on and being like, oh, some of this stuff is a little advanced for me. You know what I mean? But I do think that I liked it. Was funny. Like the comedy in it is really solid for all ages. And some of those lines, I mean, they're classics. And I wrote down a bunch as I was rewatching. But some of the, like, you know, the adult themes are very, very present. And I remember being like slightly embarrassed by those.
Oh my gosh. Like kind of just like, oh, this is like they're crushing, or like, is it like when they kiss at the paintball thing? Like what parts?
When they kiss at the paintball is like kind of fun for the whole family, but I'm talking about like Ms. Perky. I mean,
oh my God.
Can we just
Allison Janney
episode
about Miss Perky? She's writing a porno in her office. She's writing a porno about a member.
The creative flow on school hours.
On school hours.
She's writing and she's in the flow. And I remember being like, I don't think that she definitely shouldn't be doing that.
illegal,
But
probably.
she's in the creative flow.
Yeah.
She's enjoying herself.
Yeah.
And, she's writing erotica. And, so I remember that being like embarrassing to see.
Yeah. I don't even know if I got that. Like when I saw that, when she was like his pulsating member, these things about this guy clearly who she's writing about getting a boner. I don't think I quite realized that. And then she's like talking to Heath Ledger. She's like, keep it in your pouch. Okay. Kangaroo boy. Like she's talking about his wiener. So yeah, very racy. All of these things are very racy.
She goes, bratwurst, aren't we the optimist?
Are we the optimist? She's like, you have a small wiener. Okay, Patrick. Like,
so inappropriate.
It's so inappropriate.
She really shouldn't be doing this on school hours.
School hours,
and she shouldn't. Sure. And she should not. Yeah, she should not be consulting anybody in the school premises about her writing.
Absolutely not. Yeah, I think. Okay, in terms of the question, like how it shaped our ideas of high school romance, I just feel like this thing. I thought that everyone was hot. First of all, like Joey Donner. Like, yes, I thought he was hot. I liked him.
I couldn't get him off the screen soon enough. I wanted that guy.
Oh my God.
I wanted that guy to hit the dusty trail even in 5th grade. I was like, nope.
Yeah. He really reminded me of a hot neighbor I had growing up. Okay, so I think that's like a deep thing. But like I thought that Kat Stratford was hot. I thought that Joseph Gordon-Levitt was cutie and hot. I thought that Heath Ledger was very hot.
Very, yes.
Unbelievably hot. Just like hard to beat, really.
Yes.
I would say.
And he was only 20 when he made this, which is which is blowing my mind. And she was like 18, I think.
Yes, they're young people and the acting is very good also. It's very funny.
Yeah, everyone's very funny. I mean, and my all-time favorite actor in the whole piece, of course, is David Krumholtz, who I had to look up. He plays the lead elf in Santa Claus, of course.
Of course.
And he's pretty much the comedy behind the entire film that we're watching.
Truly. Yeah, he's a freak, but he's also like so confident. I love when he gets a dick drawn on his face and is just like, I have a dick on my face, don't I? Like there's just so many moments. He's like driving the motorcycle and he's just like driving it down the hill.
My balls.
My balls.
Are you kidding? Elementary school, we're like, I mean, I'm still laughing. So he doesn't need to veer. So basically, Kat is driving and she's like this like punk feminist and she's like, fuck all of you. Like I'm driving crazy, whatever. And he like doesn't need to veer that strongly off the road, but like off the driveway. But he basically like veers out of the way.
She says, remove head from sphincter, then drive.
Like, he veers out of the way and then completely unnecessarily, like completely
plummets
the cliff, like Thelma and Louise, just like off the cliff in midair, and he screams, "My balls!" And then he's just, like tumbling
plummeting.
Down. Like that didn't need to happen, but it's like David Krumholtz is going to do that in this.
Right? Case. I feel like he is just like who you aim to be in life in general.
DB, thanks so much for saying that. That's exactly what I've come here to talk a little bit more about.
I'm changing my name to David Krumholtz.
I feel, he's wearing the helmet, he's wearing the goggles, he's flying off this thing for no reason. And the my balls is kind of like it's like my ball, it's like kind of quiet, which I also like. It's not even that big of a thing, just my balls, like kind of quiet.
Listen, we could do an entire episode about David Krumholtz saying my balls, but I fear we have to move on.
Oh, no. Really fun. I do want to circle back to David Krumholtz a few more times, but I'll wait. We can go
Listen,
back. Yeah.
Don't you worry. Okay, for those of you out there who have been living under a rock your whole life, who haven't seen 10 Things I Hate About You, let me tell you what it's about. The film stars Julia Stiles as Kat Stratford, an independent, strong-willed high schooler who's not interested in romance. No, thank you. Enter hottie Patrick Verona, played by the beautiful Heath Ledger. Smile lines for days much? I think so. The mysterious bad boy hired by a fellow student to date Kat so her younger sister can date too. Cue the grand gestures, witty banter, and of course, the amazing serenade on the bleachers, right? So the why. Why are we talking about this? As much as we love it, 10 Things I Hate About You also brings up some dicey tropes around consent, manipulation, toxic masculinity. So let's unpack what works and what doesn't and why we still love it anyway, right? And so now on to the core of this episode here called That's Problematic. We're going to break down 3 of the most problematic elements in this movie. And then don't worry, we'll get a chance later to talk about our favorite lines. But the first one is the bet to date Cat, right? Like how do you feel like starting a relationship on deception affects trust? And what does this say about romance in high school, Melissa?
Oh, yeah, it's a huge issue. I want him to come clean within the first 2 seconds of it.
I know. He should have had her on his side, and
he
they
should
could
have said,
both
we
done
will
it.
Split the money.
Yes.
What was it? $5? He's getting like 5, and he's like, okay, I'll think about it. It's 10 and it's a deal. It's like 10 and it's a deal. Like $19.99, that was still too little money.
He said like $50. He's like $50 and we got a deal, Fabio. That's what he says, I think, to Joey Donner.
I guess 50 and 99 is like kind of,
with inflation, that's like $200.
Could have gotten like 60 pounds of sour belt candy with that, which I would
so specific.
Would have loved to do that.
Yeah.
You weren't eating sour belts in elementary?
Oh, I was for sure. Don't get me wrong here,
I was just loading up on sour belts. Sour straws, sour belts, Sour Patch watermelons, Sour Patch Kids.
You're naming all the favorite sours.
My mouth is watering. Okay. What are we talking about? Okay, so you were saying, that's a problem. It's a huge problem. Like that kind of a bet thing.
Like, how is she, like, she's the bad girl of the school who doesn't care about dating, right? And, like, we learn later, too, like, fast forward, right? Like, she dated Joey when she was in early high school. It didn't go well. They had sex, S-E-X. And she was going to threaten the whole, to tell the school how small his wiener was. Also, another problem here that we got. But, like, that's why he's, like, bullying her, is because, like, she didn't want to have sex with him again in high school as like a 9th grader or a 10th grader. Like that's fucked up. That's sad.
Right. And it was so interesting to watch this when there's not even like a thought about cell phones, you know what I mean? Like even all these scenes where it's like this stuff was still happening, but there's no technology to like document it. It's just like he said, she said, they said, whatever. And so I found that really fascinating too.
Yeah, I think like this whole bet thing, right? It's like just so there's so much at play. Like I mean, obviously this is based on Shakespeare's Taming of the Shrew, right? So and there's some Romeo and Juliet in here. There's like Patrick Verona. There's like all these things in here. But I do think it's such good writing. Like the premise is just so funny and genius. But it's just so interesting because like everyone's trying to date Bianca, and she's like not cool to me.
Yeah. I know. She they make her this like archetype, right?
Yes.
You know what's interesting is the I looked this up. The women who wrote this, Karen McCullough and Kirsten Smith, also wrote Legally Blonde and a lot of other stuff.
This is good intel.
But the writing of it is absolutely fantastic.
I know.
Black people love the band Paramore. We're all aware of it. It's like an accepted truth. But it made me wonder, what other seemingly random things do large groups of Black people love? So in an effort to help Black people feel more seen through community, I compiled a list of other things groups of Black people overwhelmingly like and started my podcast called Black People Love Paramore. Every episode, I talk about one thing that groups of Black people like that mainstream media doesn't necessarily associate with Black people, but we know we like. Episode topics so far include anime, astrology, Tony Hawk, Ariana Grande, Twitter, Ginger Ale, Cash App, and a whole lot more. If that sounds like you, check it out. It's called Black People Love Paramore, and you can find it anywhere you listen to podcasts.
Calling all aspiring sexual health professionals. This one is for you. If this isn't you, feel free to skip this ad. Okay, now that I'm talking to the real ones who want to make sexual health your full-time gig, I thought I'd share an exclusive offer for Sex Ed with DB listeners for my workshop, Building a Profitable Online Sexual Health Brand. In this workshop, you'll learn how to cultivate your sexual health brand, how to make relationships with other brands and sponsors in the space, and how to make a real living as a sexual health expert on the internet. And don't just take it from me. Here's a quote from the Sex Ed princess, Jill Listener, who took my workshop this past year. This workshop series was beyond what I thought it would be. I came out having gained 5,000 new followers on Instagram in less than 2 weeks. And I learned what really works in the content creation world in our sexual health space. I also gained confidence. Are you ready to get started? Email me at sexedwithdb@gmail.com and share that you listened to this ad. Let's do this. Yeah, it's smart, it's witty, it's silly. I mean, I think like this whole thing about Patrick Verona, right? Like obviously he is charming. Like he's cute, he's silly, he's like trying to get her to go out, and there's this whole like will they won't they thing, and like we as the viewer are supposed to see him and be like, oh, which they got us. Like he's so charming, he's so funny, he's such a bad boy. There's like a rumor about him like going to jail like last year, and we find out it's really that he was helping his grandpa like in the Midwest or whatever it is, right? Like, but I think like the second piece here about manipulation disguised as charm, I think like there's like where is the line, right? Like, is he charming? Is he a freak? Like what do you think about his character and kind of the interplay between him being this like likable, funny dude? He's serenading her on the bleachers. He's sexy. He's like getting her to like him. You know, at the end of the movie, he buys her a guitar.
I think what's interesting to me is that I think they're actually quite well matched in their kind of like fuck everybody attitude and like, I don't care. Like, I'm not going to take anything that seriously unless it's like something that I care about. So I feel like in that way, they actually, without all this other stuff around, probably could have been like, yeah, we get along really well because of that similar outlook. That added element obviously messes it all up of the deal and trying to convince her to date him. But like, I feel like they kind of have this shared approach in just like, oh, I don't care. And then it's interesting that they actually get along. It's like, okay, well, unfortunately, this is going to be an issue because of frickin' Joey and because of David Cromwell. What's his name?
Crumholtz.
David Crumholtz is getting involved, and Joseph G.L. is getting involved.
Yes.
So anyway,
there's a lot going on here. And the OBGYN dad who's just like constantly telling them that they're going to get pregnant. That guy's so funny.
Yeah. That's interesting great. Too. Cause he's like this archetype of like the patriarchal being like the dad being like, these are the rules of the house, but he's also kind of like bumbling and nervous and like kind of silly and ridiculous.
Yes. And like, there's also this underlying piece where like their mom walked out on them. So you're kind of like, ooh, like that's why Kat's angry. And that's why Bianca's trying to be like a goody two shoes. There's like another layer there. I feel like they touch on, but they don't really delve that deep into it.
Right.
But yeah, I think that like, I don't know, with Patrick, it's just this interesting thing because I feel like as a young person, the message I took away with that, like from that was that like, boys are going to be persistent, and if they are kind of like doing shit behind your back, as long as they still like you, then it's fine. And obviously it's not. It's bad.
It's bad. It's like the old, like all of our grandparents being like, yep, he kept calling me and I didn't like it, and then he kept calling. He called me about 600 times on the phone. And eventually,
he showed up to my doorstep. I said, like, go away.
Eventually, I said, nope, I'm not interested. And then eventually, I still said, no, I'm not interested. And then eventually, he got me. It's like, well, that's bad that happened.
Grandma, so please listen to yourself.
Listen up. Yeah. So it's like, I feel like our grandparents, it's like, that's kind of a glamorized thing. And it's happening here. Even at the end, when he like buys her the guitar, he needed to say sorry.
Right. And like this premise of me, like when he's yelling at her at prom, when she's like, you didn't even care about me. And he's like, I didn't even care about the money. I cared about you. It's like, well, then why'd you keep taking the money? Your actions speak louder than words, sir.
Right. Actually, yeah. And he's like this bad, he's supposed to be like a bad boy, whatever. But then I feel like we see his true colors at the party where he's like, remember, there's some interaction where she's like, well, aren't I supposed to like get drunk or something? She's like kind of angry. She's like, aren't I supposed to get drunk? And he's like, no, I think you should like do, whatever you want to do.
Do whatever you want to do.
That. Yeah. And that's like for a high school kid to just like kind of be strong in that. Like, no, yeah, just do whatever you want to do. Like, you don't have to do that. I thought that shows his true colors. And then that he's like trying to kind of take care of her and like, you know,
right,
will not kiss her, like wants her to get home safe and all of that. That's a different thing than even we were seeing back then.
That's very true. And it's kind of interesting because I feel like from that car scene where you're right, like ultimately I do think he's a good guy, or I think the writing is supposed to show that he is complex and like he fucked up by continuing to do this bet.
Yes.
And that's really problematic and he really should have apologized. But she, when he doesn't kiss her, gets pissed. And I feel like it was like this, I don't know, this interesting moment where I was just like, oh, like she felt really rejected. Like I'm sure I would feel insecure in that moment too.
Right.
Which kind of goes to our last like problematic moment here of like the taming of the shrew trope. Like she's a badass. Her like kind of character arc about finding love like really changes. I feel like there's this beginning. She's taken down all the posters for prom. She's like, fuck this shit. This is like a dumb mating ritual. And she and her sister can't be any more different. But I wonder if you think that this like reinforces the idea that strong independent women like need to be fixed, or do we think that this movie does actually legitimately have feminist ideals here?
I think it's kind of both. I think you can just read it in different ways. Like I think in some ways, yeah, it's showing that like she's like, you know, she's doing well. I guess she's not really being received well in school because she's like quoting, you know, Sylvia Plath and like doing all this, you know, like feminist theory stuff in her class, and her teacher's kind of like rolling his eyes. Although he does bring up intersectional feminism, doesn't he?
Yes, he does.
Like, yeah. But so anyway, like clearly she's, you know, she's like very engaged in what she cares about. And it's like, well, does that take, I'm thinking like, does her relationship with him take away from that? Not necessarily, but
I don't think so either.
Yeah. And like, does it actually, you know, she's angry a lot of the time in the beginning, and we're not exactly sure why. Then we're assuming maybe it's stuff going on at home. Maybe
the
it's
mom
like not finding her place in school, like, you know, always being compared to her sister, who's this like traditional representation of, you know, everything.
White feminine beauty.
Exactly. And so we can kind of imagine, we all felt parts of that. I'm sure many of us felt parts of that as a younger person too. And so like to be more open then to like connect with somebody else who might be different, like Patrick Verona, to be like, oh, I could actually find common ground with somebody who I initially would write off because like I'm not interested in connecting with people romantically. I think that's kind of cool that would open her up like that. But I could see people saying, is it feminist? I don't know. I could see people arguing for both ways.
Yeah, and I do think, like, let's not forget, she gets accepted into Sarah Lawrence, which is in New York, and she's in Seattle. So, like, the theory is like she's going to school in the fall, which I love. I love the idea that she gets to do her own thing. I need to take a moment to memorialize the table dance scene for a second because she just looks very hot in that scene. And as a kid, I feel like the like bi panic of being like, whoa, something's happening here. I'm turned on by this. And it was like a mix of like, I want to be you and I want to be with you.
Yeah.
And I just feel like it was this very fun, cool, like, yes, she was drunk. I think that was like not ideal. I wish that maybe she could have just done it if she was being herself sober, but it was kind of an interesting thing because like she is seen as this like rebel who doesn't give a shit, but she still is like conforming in this way. I think because she's mad that her sister's with her ex. I feel like that's kind of the premise of that night.
Totally.
Yeah. But did you have any like in terms of like different scenes with her when you were rewatching? Was that like a one that you remember being like, whoa, this is like kind of a crazy scene or what?
Yes. And the drinking part scared me as a younger person. I'm like, oh God, like, and
mature
her,
themes.
Yeah, that, and I still get scared of that. Like I'm cousin girl. I'm like, shouldn't be drinking. Oh, cool, hold back.
Oh my God.
Don't let her take that drink. Like if I were to rewrite it, yeah, it would be like without the alcohol because that just like freaks me out. But I think that obviously, yeah, that scene and the way her hair is like perfectly like yeah, and
cutie alert.
Yeah, and people are hooting and hollering for her. But you know what? Patrick he's not really into it. And I respect that about him because I respect that he's like, okay, I got to make sure when she's like she hits her head and he's the one to catch her. Mm-hmm. He's like, all right, let's get you on the swings. Let's get you swinging on the swings and you fall down. I'm going to get you right back up.
Right.
You're going home and you're
I'm taking you home.
And you're not falling asleep.
She pukes on his shoes. He's like, okay, that's okay.
He's okay. And he's like, you're not falling asleep. That also scared me about drink. I think
about the concussion thing. You were scarred from this film in a way.
From the drink.
Yeah. Wow. It was a PSA. This is Dare's work at play.
This is, yeah. This is Dare's work because I remember seeing that and being like, wow. Because for her to go from like, I hate everyone here to like, I'm going to be dancing like that so perfectly. Like, it's like, it's like we all think we're like, when we get in that situation that we're going to know what to do. It's like, do you ever get in the middle of a dance circle? And I'm like, well, I'm going to die because
this is incredibly embarrassing.
I'm going to do armpit farts and I'm going to call it a day and I'm going to get out.
We'll just back away. But there are a lot of cringy parts, a lot of lines, a lot of notes here. So I want each of us to kind of award like one of the cringy moments or like an outrageous line from the movie, the coveted Yikes Bikes Award. Mm-hmm. And so what Yikes Bikes are you gonna award your moment to?
There's a few references to PMS that I would like to like that I'm like, okay, well that wasn't doing any favors for the whole cause of stigmatizing the period. The first one is when he goes, Joey, the douche, goes, can we get Kat to take her Midol before she comes to class?
Yeah, that's a good one. I kind of didn't really. There are, you're right, a few references of like, oh, like the dad.
He goes, my insurance does not cover
PMS. Yes. Yes. Oh my God. Yeah. Okay. You're right. There are multiple references to PMS.
That's when she like backs into the car. I mean, that's hilarious when Joey blocks her in and she's in the car and she
and he's
backs
like,
up.
Bitch.
I'm like, yeah, she definitely didn't need to do that. Like that was like, she could have been like hanging on her horn, but she's like, I like that. That's like, wow, you're gonna hit his car bad. You're gonna hit it.
I think my like Yikes Bikes Award is to just Bianca as a character. I just feel like loved her on Alex Mack. Hope you've seen that show as well as a child.
Yeah.
I just feel like she is so boring and like doesn't say anything. Like the only reason that JGL's character Cameron wants to go out with her is because she's pretty. That is literally the only reason. He hasn't even talked to her and like decides that he's in love with her. And then like they don't talk about anything. Their whole premise of their relationship is him trying to get Patrick to go on a date with Kat so that he can go on a date with Bianca. And so it's just kind of like, okay, like this is shallow. Like this whole thing is shallow. It kind of just taught me, I feel like as a kid, like I'm not pretty enough. Like boys are not going to want to hang out with me because and not know me at all because I'm not as pretty as her. So I just feel like her character in general was just like bad, like poorly. She had no depth. It was just like bad.
Yeah. You know what I'm thinking too is like Joseph Gordon-Levitt's character expresses interest in her and like becomes her French tutor. And then what I find funny is that suddenly like there's not even a moment where she's like, oh, he's like, he asks her out or something. And then there's not even a moment where she's like, oh, do I even like this guy? It's like, oh, well, I can't go out with someone until my sister does. So
yes,
like I think that's a funny thing that maybe we also absorb as young people watching this. Like you don't even like if someone's interested in you, like you don't even it's not even about whether you're interested back. It's like how do I make this work for that person?
Right. Exactly. Yes, you're right. Like she's basically catering to him. Well, so we have to move on, okay? We have to rate the movie 1 to 5 voms. 1 vom is it's dated but mostly harmless. 5 voms, full body cringe, aged like milk. Where are we rating this?
I mean, I would probably put it at a 1.
I was gonna say a 1.5. Honestly,
yeah. Like there's stuff where I'm like, yeah, you shouldn't have done that. You shouldn't. Yeah. They should have told her pretty early on that he was doing the deal.
Yes,
all the PMS stuff, all the like. Yeah, and there's a bunch of nasty stuff in there, but it's like it's child's play compared to all these other Yeah.
And they're in high school, to be fair. Some rom-coms these are 30-year-old people and they're cheating on each other and they're tricking each other and they're shallow howling it up where they only see each other if they're not fat. You know, there's a lot.
God.
We have bigger fish to fry. Okay. And so to wrap this up here, we're going to give our final thoughts and a rewrite. So any final thoughts, and maybe if there's like ones, you know, if there's any like legacy in rom-com history that you want to talk about, you forgot about Shallow Hal and you just remembered about it.
Yeah, I'm like, wow. Okay.
Yeah. And any scene that you want to like rewrite or a character you want to rewrite, whatever.
I want to rewrite so he takes the money because he's like, I don't care. Yeah, I'm going to do this bet, get money. I'm going to buy like fish or whatever he's going to buy with it. And then then the next, so then when they actually connect, and I forget, they actually start connecting and he's like, oh, I actually kind of like this girl. And she's like, oh, I kind of like him back.
Mm-hmm.
Then at that point, I want him to go, yo, check this out. David Krumholtz's character Michael gave me $50 to take you to prom so that his friend can go out with the sister. It's like a whole stupid thing. Sorry.
I like you and I want to continue to pretend like we're still getting the money and I'll take you out on dates.
You get 25, I get 25.
Right. The only thing, well, not only, but the main thing, honestly, that I would rewrite seems small, but it's not. It's like the last scene of the movie, he buys her guitar, puts it on her car, and she's like, you know that every time you mess up, you can't just get me a guitar, right? Like after they kissed, and he's like, who knows? Maybe it's even like something and a tambourine. Like he's naming other instruments. And then he kisses her again. And then she tries to say something to him and he forces a kiss onto her again. This has taught so many young girls and women that like, if a boy likes you, he will interrupt you and make you kiss him because his desire to do that and to shut you up is larger than the consent that you deserve. And it's such a small moment, but it really impacted me as a kid. Like I very much was like, oh, like that must be what passion is. Like that's romance. Like that is what it's like to be liked by someone and loved by someone. And I should be okay with like being interrupted and like forced a kiss on me. And even though it's Heath Ledger and even though he's hot and even though he bought a guitar, it's problematic, and I would change that piece.
That's that's very true. So maybe I'm putting it at a 2 for that because that does a number on you.
I'll tell you now, that does a number on you. Okay, here's a teaser of the rom-com that we're talking about next week. DM us on Instagram at Sex Ed with DB Podcast. Tell us what you think it is. Next week, we are talking about another movie set in Washington State. What are the chances? The film stars a high school student who is always a bit of a misfit, who doesn't expect life to change much when she moves from sunny Arizona to gloomy Washington. Then she meets a handsome but mysterious and impossibly fast and strong teen. She enters into a dangerous romance with him as her immortal soulmate. Bum, bum, bum. Melissa, thank you so much for being here. You're a clown. Love to talk to you. This is fantastic.
Thanks for having me, DB. As always, love your pod.
Anytime.